Welcome to Produce Yourself here at the Comedy Club on Clubhouse. I have my two sidekicks with me for this episode. I have Dan Long from Dan Long Comedy. He's out there killing it on Laughing Spree TV. And I also have Jackie Sanchez. She runs Jacked Up shows at the Improvs here in South Florida, as well as just out there killing it with the producing of shows. Both of them have been for a very long time. They've been in the scene, they've been doing their thing. You guys, let's welcome them. And for everyone just joining us in the room, this is Produce Yourself Room on the Comedy Club. My name is Minda. I'll be hosting it. We'll be doing this every Monday. It will move till 7:30 after tonight, but we got a lot of things to talk about. A lot of errors going on out there in the scene. A lot of people doing the right thing, so we want to highlight both of those. Um, Dan, welcome to the stage. Anything you want to say to the people out there before we get started talking about tonight's topic, getting booked on dope comedy shows?
Yes, thank you for having me, Minda. Yeah, just a little bit about myself to those in the room here. I've been doing comedy a little over 10 years. Been producing shows down in South Florida, started producing shows in PA, Western PA when I first started. Produced shows at the Improv, helped, produce the festival. And, obviously we've produced shows at sort of local bars and different venues over the years. And I guess I'll start kind of kicking it off tonight with one of the things I'll say for anyone in the room that's maybe new to comedy. I would say one of the first things I would say to highlight is be when you first start, like don't burn bridges would be the first thing I would say. I feel like sometimes there's too many like young comics that you'll see, and they'll start to put together a few good open mics or whatever, and then they start to get in arguments with people, and they start to like be bitter because they're not getting booked on shows. And I've just seen, over the years, some newer kind of comics that might have been decent that kind of burned bridges and let, just got kind of a bad reputation early on just from not being able to get along with people. And until you get to a certain level, most of the people that are going to book you in comedy is going to be other comics most of the time. It's like, yeah, once you go on, you'll start doing clubs and bigger venues, but to burn bridges with comics whenever you first start, it's just not smart because that's probably who's going to be booking you. So, like I said, I figured I would start with maybe like almost sort of entry level type experience with comedy, and then maybe as we go on here, maybe some tips for guys that have been doing it a little bit longer and stuff like that.
Yo, very true in the respect that like comics are supporting comics when you first start and they are booking you and it's just one of those necessary evils. You just got to get along the best you can and try not to make things crazy. I mean, if we're not supporting each other, then nobody's supporting us because I promise you, no matter how many friends come out and see you when you first start, or how many friends come out and go to your shows when you first start producing them, they will stop coming as often as they do. And you will have to go find new people to book you on their shows or come to your shows. But the next person we got up here, Jackie, she doesn't know this. She kind of inspired this entire podcast in the sense that one of the things we're going to go over tonight as one of our guests is she posted something on Facebook as a producer that she was dealing with and was really, really informational. And I thought brought a lot of things to light that people don't talk about. But, let's say the inspiration for this whole thing this evening, Jackie Sanchez. Jackie, anything you want people to know about yourself that I didn't cover?
Wow, what an intro. Thank you, Minda. Pressure is not on at all. No, I'm happy to be the inspiration for this. I like being able to talk about the things that the newer comics maybe don't want to talk about or are avoiding. So I think it's very helpful as well because there's certain things that are like common sense to older comics that are just foreign to new comics, and it doesn't hurt us to let them know because it'll make our booking that much easier, I think.
Right on. Yeah. And like I said, just so you guys know in the audience, we're not just spitballing here. Collectively, we've all been producing shows over, 10 years plus, each of us doing it for like on the grind from before COVID to after, and doing some really either notable venues that we maintained for, 3, 4, 5 years, or, actually doing it down here at one of the South Florida improv. So we're not just talking a bunch of shit up here. We actually want everyone to learn, because the one thing that I've realized is the more comedians out there producing quality shows, it helps the entire scene for sure. Like if somebody who's never gone to comedy before goes to a really shitty show or is booked on a show where people really shouldn't be headlining or featuring, they're reticent. They don't want to go to another show that's local because they think it may not be at the same caliber. So we're going to teach you guys how to get on it, and we're going to teach you guys how to produce them, and we're going to teach you guys how to do some great content. And as I was talking about how Jackie's post kind of inspired this whole series, um, I'm going to go to it. She put it on Facebook, and it was, to new comics, but could apply to just anyone. And she gave 6 tips here on what you should really think about when you're reaching out trying to get booked on shows, especially when you're a new comic and people don't know who you are. Number one on the list was try to support the show first. Go out and watch the show. Talk to the booker while you're there. Comedy is a very out of sight, out of mind thing. What were you talking about there, Jackie?
I think, I mean, for a couple things, but for one, I think it's, first of all, always nice if you go support another show, because obviously we need people at the end of the day. We're trying to put on good shows. So it's always a good look to go support it. Personally, me, with my weird anxiety, I love to see a show before I do it. That helps me kind of ease my nerves a little bit. So I think it's also helpful for the comedian as well to go check it out. But also, with the out of sight, out of mind, I think comedians don't realize how many of us there are, and how many comics come up to you when you're at a show and say, "Hey, I'd love to be, on a laughing spree this," and like how many people come do that or are in your DMs. Like, so while you don't want to annoy anybody, but you want to make sure you're approaching it, I think, in the right way. And nothing is better to me than seeing someone. If I see someone constantly in the back at the show supporting it, I think about booking them the next time, like, because they're there, they're right in front of me, but not harassing me in the same sense.
Yeah, and can I piggyback off that a little bit? From what Jackie's saying, and Jackie did a very good post about it, it's the why. Why should they book you? Because, as you're coming up, a lot of us, don't have necessarily some sort of massive following where it's like when we come out, a bunch of people are going to come see us. So there has to be another reason why someone would want to book you. And, the thing is, like you said, support the venue. Another thing, obviously provide people your credits or things that you've done that would, so they know that you're like a seasoned, experienced comic. Is like a big plus, because they don't want to necessarily put someone up that's been doing comedy for 6 months, because like throughout the years running and producing shows, I'll have people reach out to me and go, hey, can I do 10 minutes on your show? Hey, can I do some time? And it'll be like, I don't know who you are. I've never heard of you. You didn't send me information on any shows you've ever done. I don't know how long you've been doing comedy. You have no credits, but it's people just send you the craziest messages of, hey, can I do some time? Well, why? Why would I put you up if you haven't told me anything about you? So, yeah, I think that's just a tip with make sure that there's a reason as to why. And, one thing I kind of do whenever I'm traveling, whenever I'm going to shows, I'm trying to get booked in New York, booked in LA, out of state, wherever, I'll mention to those people that, hey, I produce shows in South Florida. So in their mind, they'll go, hey, whenever I'm coming down to South Florida, I'm going to hit up Dan and make that connection. So it's more beneficial, in addition to me saying, hey, I'm a comic that's been around for a while, but also it's beneficial to sort of put me on, because then, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, when they come down to South Florida, I can hook them up.
Right on. That's definitely a perk of it, is being able to talk about producing. and know that, look, it doesn't need to be tit for tat, because at the bottom line, especially if you're doing a paid ticket show someplace, you need to provide people with value. You can't just put up your friends or people who put you on shows, but to know that you are a connection in a certain location that can put them in touch with yourself and other producers is a super valuable benefit if you're doing both. And we're all comics too, so we're on the grind of trying to get booked in all kinds of places. And that's why I think number two on Jackie's list is there's nothing wrong with asking, just do it the smart way. Email's the most professional. DM is next. Don't text or blow up somebody's personal phone. And to that, don't just say, like Dan was saying, hey, can I get on your show? Because it's like, who the fuck are you? I've never heard of you before, most likely. And if I have, that doesn't mean I remember your set. Approach it in a three-step way. Like, tell them who you are, and in one sentence, what your biggest accomplishment is in comedy, whatever that may be. And maybe your accomplishment at that point is, I live in Lake Worth where you do the show, and I have 5 of my friends or 10 of my friends who would definitely want to come out and see me. Maybe you've won a contest. Maybe you were at the improv recently. Whatever it may be, offer them a link to your set. It doesn't have to be a fucking 20-minute set, but like, give them 5 or 10 minutes and let them see what they're working with, to see what level they may want to book you at. And then, you know, tell them when you're available. If you know their show is all the time and you live in the area, tell them that. If you're going to be in town for a couple of weeks, tell them what weeks. I did a festival with people like Brian Callen, Jim Norton, Andrew Schultz on the bill, and we got texts and DMs and messages every day that said, hey, I see you're doing a festival. Can I do some time on your festival? And that was the whole message. Like, who the hell's going to respond to that? Like, it's insane, but it happens more often than you think. And if you're doing it, um, please stop. It doesn't, it makes it very inefficient. I want to just go see who you are, learn about you, add an Instagram handle. If you got a big following someplace, direct me to that. Let me know like who I'm talking to. Number three on Jackie's list is, when asking, I think being nice and humble is the best approach. And then she offers, hey, it looks like you have a killer show. I'd love the opportunity to be on it. See that exactly. And then giving them some information. Don't assume that it's our pleasure to have you on our show, because we put money out a lot of the times to produce that show. Uh, I mean, Jackie, was there anything else behind that that you wanted to go into?
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm glad you said the it's like it's not our pleasure thing, because that was kind of the hidden message behind that, was the be humble. Because, and I'll just be totally honest, I don't there's not people in here who are hitting me up directly yet, but I mean I'll get people to say like, you should have me, I'll be great or something, and it's like, it'll be bad comics, it'll be people I don't know at all, and I'm like, exactly that. Why? How? Like, what? For what reason do I believe that you're gonna come and kill it and be worth the blind booking, just hoping you have a killer set? Like, it's just not worth it to me. And I'm a firm believer in, if you're asking for something, you should be a little nice. Like, if you're asking for a favor, you don't then want it this way, like, you just be humble and nice. Because I'm definitely less tempted to book the dude who's like, yo, I'll kill your shit, blah blah blah. I don't know. Well, you're allowed to curse in here, I hope. But you know what I mean. I don't want. I hate an arrogant attitude, which kind of follows what you were saying in the very beginning of just being a likable person when people who would actually want to book you. Like, if you come in with an arrogant attitude, I don't think anyone's going to want to actually work with you and work alongside you, even the other comedians at that. So it just, and you want a good show environment overall, I think. So having even that one bad egg, I think, can make the whole night kind of weird. So that was more so my angle with all of that.
Yeah, right on. And what's crazy is your next one kind of follows into it. Like, don't ask over and over and over again. If you ask and you don't hear back, give it some time. Let, maybe you have to interact with the person a little bit more. You have to do a little bit more comedy, because there's nothing that says psycho like somebody who is not persistent in a professional way of every couple months following up, or hey, maybe you didn't see I did this, or here's a new set link I want to show you. I'm talking about that crazy person who hits you up every single week, or every single month demanding to be on your show. Has that happened to either of you guys?
For sure, I get constant texts even that are like, "Hey, don't forget me. I'm funny." And I'm like, "Oh man." Like it's hard sometimes when they're not that funny too, which just it does happen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not a good look in general because if you're hitting someone up all the time, well, it's like, well, you seem like you're never booked. So it's like, well, you must not be that good if your schedule is constantly open. Yeah, I mean, if you're hitting me up every weekend to do my show, then it's like, then no one's booking you. It's just not a good look. Like, you just got to be patient with it. And it's like, you should have, if there's a few different shows you're trying to get on, sort of casually follow up with these people from time to time. But yeah, just to sort of blow up the same person is just not a good look for any show, and it just makes you look unprofessional. And from what Jackie was saying too, with like being humble about reaching out. Almost treat it, like it's like a corporate job in some ways. In the fact that like if I was asking my boss for something, I wouldn't go, "Hey boss, give me this." I wouldn't say, "Hey, do this for me." I'd be like, "Hey, you ask politely, you're humble, like you handle it in a professional manner." Because, like Jackie runs shows at the improvs down here, and there's a lot of good comics in South Florida. Like, she can find people that are going to kill her show. For someone to reach out and go, "Oh, I'll kill it on your show." Well, so would a lot of people. It's like finding the people that, obviously are the best fit, but also bring something to the table as well. So, like I said, just say, "Oh, I'll kill it." Well, it's like, well, so would a lot of people. Like, act like you're a professional because you wouldn't do that in any other form of business.
Yeah, I think comedians forget that comedy is a business sometimes, and that even though we're taking the road less traveled and we're being creative and we're living our passion and we're doing artsy things and we're out and it's a different vibe, that there's still rules of engagement in business that actually set you apart because unfortunately a lot of comedians aren't as connected. And like we're talking about it, you're hitting somebody up, they're not booking you. Maybe then you go back to number one and you try to go out and support the show if you haven't in the past. I will say this, when you're out supporting the show, that is not the time and place to approach the booker or the producer of the show and ask them to get on the show. They're busy. That's the worst thing you can do if you've never produced a show before. It's high intensity. You're responsible for a lot of people. You're corralling comedians. You're making sure people are on their time. You may or may not be hosting the show or on the show. So, like, don't bring it up then. Let them just see you and shoot them a note a couple days later saying, "Yo, I was at the show. It was amazing. It's so great that it's progressing. When you're booking it in the future, please keep me in mind. Here's a new set. Here's something I've done that you might not know about." And like, go from there. Because it's super awkward. I mean, has that happened to either of you guys where people come and ask face to face at your show or at someplace else, and you got to tell them, like, I can't book you, like, to their face?
Yes, I have it anytime I go to the improv, which is like why half the time I try to only go to like regular shows and stuff. But because it hurts my feelings to have to hurt anyone else's feelings. But on top of it, I don't like because that also can follow with the person who's constantly texting and whatever hitting you up. You dread seeing them in person. When you see them and you're there, you're like, fuck, right away. That and who wants to be viewed that way? Like no one should want to be viewed that way. I know I have very heightened social anxiety, but I think common sense, you shouldn't want to look that bad in front of people, but there is certain people who for sure I see and I know right away. I'm like they're gonna come say something, and especially if it's at the show, they'll say, "Hey, this is great. You should put me on." And I'm like, "Oh well, tonight's definitely full. It's been full for 2 months." Like I don't. It's also you can't think that it's like a bar show where you're just gonna throw somebody up because they're there. Like that's it's just not the way that you have to run the lineup by management. Even like there's just it's wild that comics think that that's the case, but it just ends up making you kind of want to be ignored, which sucks.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, the producer of the show doesn't owe you anything as far as putting you up on the show. Like it would happen in the past. There was a show produced for over 4 years, and someone I had put on multiple times throughout the 4 year span, probably two or three times, and this person would come up to me and go, "Hey, I haven't been booked on." He cornered me at a mic, when I was doing something else. Say, "Hey, I haven't been on your show in a long time. What's going on? I thought we were friends, and I help you out." And I'm like, I put you up, multiple times. I try and be organized and put as much people up as possible, but I don't necessarily have some grandiose system where I get reminders each year of who to book again. And at certain times, it's like I'd already put him up multiple times, and I didn't book him again after that because I thought it was rude that, he approached me that way, especially after I had gone out of my way to put this person up multiple times. So.
Yeah, and it does. It gets weird and it gets unprofessional. And number six on Jackie's list kind of goes into that. Is if they're not booking you, it doesn't mean that we mean that you suck or that we hate you or that we think you're a terrible comedian or whatever. Maybe you just need to progress more. Maybe you're asking for feature spots and you're still a guest spot, and maybe you don't fit the style of the show, which is something I want to talk about right now because, that's something that's happened to us where we've moved the location of our show and the audience went from, 35, 40 plus because it is South Florida and there are pockets down here where there's straight up retirees and old people and whatever. And we moved it to a location where it was like a younger vibe. So now we have like the 18 to 40 crowd. And the bottom line is when you're on the producing side and you're booking shows, you have to know who your audience is and the type of comedian that your audience is going to want to see. And if you're doing a show about up and coming new young comedians and you've been in the scene for 20 years and you're like 55 years old and you're not fitting the vibe or the theme of the show, it actually, you could be the best comedian in the whole world and we could love you and think you're freaking amazing. But unfortunately, that's not, as producers, what we need to bring to the venue. The venue is expecting a certain type of comedian and a certain type of lineup, and we have to fulfill that. Um, because there are tons of bookers and there's tons of rooms. So you need to be aware of the type of comedian you are, right? So that you know what kind of room and kind of audience fits your style so that you can be the best comedian you can be. I mean, do you guys find a lot of times that people will hit you up and it's seemingly out of place?
Yeah, all the time. As you were kind of saying, like, my shows, I try to do, the up and coming comics from Tampa, from Orlando, from Miami. Like, I want the club regulars and the ones who are probably gonna, level up beyond their own pond, so to say. Those are the comics I'm looking for, the new ones that are like new to the grind but are killing it. And then I definitely have a group of older, veteran comics who headline everywhere and have, their career figured out. They could headline the show no problem. But the problem is it's not the theme. It's just not what I'm putting up. So it's going to be like, one, like you said, 55-year-old dude talking about marriage and his weight. And then it's going to be a bunch of kids talking about TikTok and shit like that. So it's like, do I want to make the show kind of like awkward or keep the flow that it has of this youth and energy, like it's a certain vibe that we're going for. There's no shade to the older comics at all, though that's I think the hard part, especially with being a booker, because these were probably the comics who booked us as we came up. That's the problem I think I deal with the most is it's people who did me favors when I was new, and I feel that I owe something. But at the end of the day, we don't owe anyone because booking is booking. It shouldn't be always a transaction. I think like it can be, but it doesn't always have to be, and it shouldn't be. But there's just always that kind of guilt. But if you've got a certain theme, I think, stay on it and don't let guilt, really talking to myself, I can't let guilt get in the way of it.
Real quick, let me reset the room because we're almost at a half hour for everyone joining us. You're at in the comedy club. We're in the produce yourself room. tonight's topic. We're talking about getting booked on super dope shows, whether that's, at your local improv or Funny Bone or some of the great local shows that you may have going on that are um, keynote ongoing shows in your scene, and maybe you're not getting a lot of traction. We are going to take some questions here at the end, which is real soon. So if anyone wants to raise their hand, you have a question about getting booked that you want to ask us, go ahead and do that. Please have a profile picture, a name, an actual thing when I go to your profile so that I know you're not a crazy person and you're going to like time suck us. But like, we definitely want to hear from everyone. If you're not great with English, hit us on the back channel with your questions on the messages, and we're happy to work with you that way. But this is Produce Yourself in the Comedy Club. Hit the notifications. We're going to be doing this every single Monday. It's going to move to 7:30. We will always be on the replays, but this is a way that you can ask questions in real time. So we're talking about getting ourselves booked tonight, getting ourselves booked on dope shows. We've gone through a lot of the do's and don'ts. We were leaving off kind of like not fitting the theme of the show. And Dan, like I feel like sometimes with some of the shows you've produced, you've had the opposite problem where you're dealing with an older audience and you have to make the right fit for that. How has that gone for you?
Yeah, it just comes down to, like you were saying earlier, just kind of booking the right talent for it, and sometimes the level of the show can change. With two different shows I've produced over the years, the sort of budget and crowd size increased over the year, and we were able to, go out and sometimes get comedians with bigger credits and followings and things like of that nature. So a comic that might have been my headliner the year prior had been maybe relegated more to like a feature spot now. And it's not necessarily, an insult to that comic. It was just like, sometimes as the budgets get bigger and things grow, you kind of gain access to comedians with bigger followings and more credits. So you just have to, be cognizant of what type of comic fits the room. Because like I said, ran a show that was very upscale, very wealthy area. So that was a different, very young show. I ran in Delray Beach. So the comedians I booked was completely different than a show I ran in Deerfield, which was much older, much more conservative. And, I would have a few comics that reached out that were, I enjoyed personally, but their comedy was very dirty, and it just didn't ever fit that type of room. And it wasn't them. It was just the room. And I'm not just going to put someone up arbitrarily just because I like them. It's got to fit, because at the end of the day, we want to put on a good show so we can keep putting them on. Keep bringing it back every month, because an audience member can have go to one bad show and then they don't ever come back again. Or, when it comes to the scene in general, they might go, oh man, if they're just kind of a casual comedy fan, go, man, stand up sucks. I'm just going to go see a local band tonight. If you live in a city where there's a lot of things to do, you can potentially turn people off from comedy for a while. So like it's important to kind of have your show booked right.
Yeah, and knowing the type of show that you're asking to being booked on is the key. If it's a show that you know requires cleaner material and you know you're not known for that in the scene when you're at open mics, maybe it would help if you let them know, hey, I have 10 minutes of clean material. Here's a set of me doing cleanish stuff. Also, a lot of the bigger clubs that may be in your scene or your market or your region, a lot of them, especially when they're fielding up and coming hosts, they're looking for somebody to be cleaner and not so offensive. You're hosting the show. You're there to bring everyone in and get everyone on the same page and get ready to have a fun night. If you're a super sexual comedian or divisive or political, the expectation that you're the right fit for that may be a false one. It's very rare that a major venue is looking to put up a comic to host, especially one that they really don't know, um, that's going to do something or say something that really turns off the audience because you're there to get everyone excited about the night. Um, it's just one of those things that you learn the longer you're out there and the more shows you see, but you will definitely help your win percentage by knowing the show, knowing your own comedy, and knowing where you fit. Brett has to come on stage. Brett, did it not bring you up? Oh, invite to speak. There you go, man. What do you got to say about all this? You gotta unmute your mic. Brett has a little party hat, so we've known that he'd never done this before. Oh man. All right, Brett, when you unmute your mic, we're gonna let you go.
There we
Oh,
go.
there
Now
you
I
go.
figured it out. All right.
Yeah, he has
I
this
couldn't figure
now.
out where the
That's
button was.
okay. That's why they do the party hat thing, to let everyone know, like,
Yeah.
this dude may not know what's about to happen here. So
Just
welcome, Brett. I know you
just
know a
pop my
couple of us.
cherry.
Thanks for coming
Uh,
out and supporting.
no problem.
What do you have to say, or do you got a question, or what do you think?
Okay, so when reaching out to a major club and you're probably reaching out for the first time, they don't really know you. Uh, what would be the procedure of finding out if they're even receiving your messages officially? Because obviously sometimes they're not going to respond. They may get busy. You get lost in the big inflow of people trying to contact them, or they just haven't had time yet. Uh, how would you find out if you're even messaging the right person, or it's even coming through, rather than just not being uh, interested in you?
All right, I'll take this. I would love for Jackie to speak on this as well. I'm
Um,
going to
I
say
was
first.
willing to if you want me
Oh, are you
to.
willing to? Go ahead, take this
Yeah.
one, and then I have some things to say too.
No, I was gonna say my advice always for that, if you want to make sure that the email is correct, hit someone up who you know gets work there or book shows there, whatever. Like ask the local regular. Just make sure that it's the correct email, and then odds are it is the correct email, and they just don't get back in time. I would say the contents of your email and how frequently you do email are the two major things that you don't want to mess up. Don't email them too much, and make sure you have a clip in there because they definitely need clips, and it's got to be a really good 5 minute clip, very clear, no, very clean. Just a perfect clip really is what you're supposed to be sending. Because if it's shitty or if it's just audio or anything, they're gonna exit out and not even look. That's my advice on that. You could take it, Minda.
What would be some other points as far as besides a clip, credits
Well, I
and
mean, a bio is really important. I mean, that was one of the things I was going to kind of go into. A lot of the times down here, people don't know who they're speaking with. I mean, 4 to 5 sentences, who you are, the biggest thing you've accomplished in comedy, what any highlights or things of note. And it doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs. Nobody reads that anyway. Like you probably hit 4 sentences and you've hit enough. But I would also say too, there's a difference between the person reaching out to book who's been booked before, has been booked a bunch of times, or is an already regular, right? They can kind of just shoot an email over a little bit more casually. I mean, I can only speak for a handful of scenes because I've only dabbled in comedy in so many places multiple times around the country. But I can tell you this: every major club or whatever, they have on nights and off nights. And unless you're in LA, right, your off nights are your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday shows. You're probably going to get booked on one of those way before you're ever going to get booked on a weekend. And you're definitely not going to get booked on a sold out weekend if you've never been booked there before. And that has nothing to do with anyone's skill. It just has to do with being in the rotation and not being in the rotation.
yeah,
Well,
that
I
makes
I
perfect
also
sense.
think
Oh,
something. Oh,
go ahead.
sorry, Dan. I was
No,
just
no,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
I think a lot of comics also don't realize that half the time it's not even the club booker. The booker is just in contact with agents, and they submit clips through the agents. So I think a lot of new comics don't necessarily know that and kind of take it out pretty hard. The booker can control usually the host, but lately features I feel like roll with everyone, and it's so hard to even have a feature spot like regularly, but I think they definitely got to also realize that's a factor and it's not just them totally being ignored.
Yeah, Dan, they've hit you up for clips for hosting, right? Like it's not even anymore send us our clips so they can pick your feature. They're coming with features and they're asking for clips for hosts. Is that right?
Yeah. So one of the things I was going to say, I hope you can hear me, Brett, is being kind of strategic whenever you reach out. Like when I try and get booked, I don't just try and get booked on every weekend. I'll think, okay, does my comedy, maybe line up with this? Maybe it's a comedy that is kind of like, some sort of like, like a redneck comic or something, or maybe it's a comic that's like maybe his comedy's known for being dark or whatever. If it's a comedian that's like, I don't think that my style, which is more kind of laid back, not less like a high energy act by any means, like if that's what the headliners like, then I'm probably not like the best fit. So that's kind of when I reach out to think like strategic, or maybe I've worked with this person at one of the shows I've produced in the past, and that's when I hit up, go, hey, I worked with so and so years ago. We worked well together, we got along. I'd love to kind of work with them again, and they can kind of say that I did a good job when I worked with them before. That's definitely a way to kind of get in with them. It's just like being smart about it. Just like hitting up the club every weekend. Just go, oh, I think I'm a fit for everybody. Well, that's not realistic because comedy's subjective. Like most people's act is probably not going to go well in front of some audience. Um, so that's what I would say. Just be strategic.
I was gonna say, I think that's smart, and also kind of goes with what Minda said before of trying to get off nights instead. I think it's way smarter and more likely that they'll actually pair you with someone who's just doing a Wednesday or a Sunday or something, and it's a one-off. They're not committing to this comic they've never seen or had work in their club, because I think comics don't also realize. The way you are in the club, your behavior, your drinking, doing a huge tab or something in the green room. Like, there's a lot of factors, and they don't want to just throw anyone in and be stuck with them all weekend. So I definitely think knowing what comedy style you fit, like Dan said, and then picking a much more likely one instead of like, yo, I want to open for Anthony Jeselnik. It's like, that is probably going to be someone they've already used and are used to.
Yeah, and like be genuine in fact that like especially when it comes to like clean comedy, because I think a lot of people will claim that they can do a certain amount of comedy that's clean, but it's pretty difficult. So it's like you want to be genuine about how much time you can actually do, because who knows, you might convince the club or the booker to put you up one time and say, hey, I can do 40 minutes or I can do 20 minutes of clean material, and they take a chance on you, and then you go up and it doesn't go well, then you've kind of burn that bridge, and you know what I mean, like it's not worth it if you just get booked there once and then they've sort of soured on you. Then you got to try and repair that relationship, and it just creates more headache than even kind of getting booked there in the first place. So it's like just be genuine on how much time you can do, and what type of comedy that you do, and who you kind of fit with.
Yeah, and if your scene or your market anywhere, comedians out there has like a new faces show, that's probably the easiest thing to get booked on as a host and take it from there. I don't think down here mostly anyone has ever been booked to do an entire weekend hosting that hasn't already hosted a couple new faces shows and a couple one-off Thursday shows or Sunday shows. It's kind of like a progression thing. Um, Brett, you got any other questions for us before we wrap up? And anyone else, if you got some questions, this is the time to raise your hand. All right, I don't think he does. So we're going to wrap this up for tonight. If nobody else has any questions, Brett, thank you so much because you opened a door for us to talk about bios and kind of, being realistic about getting up on which shows in your, on the big clubs in your scene. So I really, really appreciate that input. Dan, oh, there you are. We good? Did we cover you for tonight?
I was just going to say thank you for hosting the room.
Thanks for coming on, Brett.
Yeah, bro. It was our pleasure, and we appreciate you helping us make this interactive. We're gonna be putting this out. as content on Laughing Spree. We have laughingspree.com and at Laughing Spree TV on Instagram and YouTube. We do tons of funny parody and skit videos with South Florida comedians. They star in our stuff. Jackie and Dan has been in a lot of our stuff from the very, very beginning. And it's something that we love to do. And this is just kind of our way of adding to that content. So hit the notifications. We already have the next one for next week up. It's going to be 7:30 on Monday. We're going to talk about how to produce your own shows. And we're going to talk about everything from picking the right venues to booking, to not just booking your friends, but also to how to make that work financially for you, because shows tend to be a loss sometimes when you start, and you either got to build to something or you get nothing out of it. So we're going to talk to everyone about producing your shows. Bring your questions, tell your friends, hit the notification, join the comedy club if you haven't. I also started something called Producer House. So if you want to be a member of that, hit me up and I'll move you to the front of the wait list if you were in the room tonight. Or if you're listening on the replay, just let us know. If you have any follow-up questions that you didn't want to talk on stage about, you can always hit us up on the back channel anytime with your producer questions. We're here to help you get booked, to produce quality shows, and if you're doing content, we're going to be diving into that. So check us out on Laughing Spree. Dan, where can everyone find you?
Follow me at Dan Long Comedy on Instagram, Facebook, and starting to do more stuff on TikTok as well.
Jackie?
Yeah, TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok, Jackie Sanchez Comedy, or Instagram, Jackie Sanchez 22. And if you want to follow my show page, you can follow Jacked Up Comedy Show on Instagram as well. And there's an email. You can email if you want to get booked professionally. Thank you, Minda. This was great.
Thanks,
For
Minda.
sure. And if you're in South Florida, right, you want to go to one of the Jacked Up shows at the Improvs down here, hit Jackie up. Maybe she can help you out with that, send you the link or whatever. And you guys come back here every Monday, produce yourself, get yourself in order at 7:30. We're moving it to 7:30s. I'm going to try to do it every Monday unless I'm traveling or something, but we're going to keep this going. Tons of topics coming up that you're not going to believe. I have like a whole list of them, like free ticket shows, first paid shows. We're going to talk about how to negotiate with talent one night. One night, we're going to talk about show etiquette, talents, do's and don'ts, how to respect the room and yourself when you're booked on a show. We'll also dive deep in one episode about venue negotiation and finding the right venues, but hosting 101, I'm going to tell you, the list goes on and on. Every episode is going to be dedicated to one of these topics. Next week, we're going to talk about producing our own shows and how to get that started. So I hope you all will come back. RSVP if you don't want to forget, so you'll get the notification, or hit the bell. Join Comedy Club. Follow us on all our socials. And thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for